So I knew when I was pregnant with my second son, I just wanted to know, like, is it possible to have a vaginal birth? Because I've always heard one, you get one C-section, always a C-section. And I knew so many women who had C-sections at the same time, the same year that I had mine. And then they had multiple children afterwards, and they were continuing with having more C-sections. And I was trying to make sure if we had to go this route. And so I started looking up, is it okay for me to have a vaginal birth? And when I found out, like, yes, you can have a vaginal birth after you have a C-section, I just started sharing that with everyone I knew, anyone who had already had a previous C-section or anyone who even had vaginal births. I just was sharing with them, like, it's not always one C-section, always a C-section.
Shalom. I am so inspired by Kiara Taylor's birth story. She has her first birth experience as a C-section and then has 2 natural births and becomes an advocate for vaginal births after C-sections. Kiara Taylor is a mother, a health coach, a certified breastfeeding specialist, and she is also a blogger. So make sure you go out and check out her blog, and especially one that she has shared all the things that she planned in preparing to have that first vaginal birth after a C-section. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Okay, shalom. I'm just gonna start off by asking you to introduce yourself and also like a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so shalom, everybody. My name is Kiara. I am a mother to 3 children, ages 3, 7, and 10, and I'm expecting my 4th child this summer in August. I have had many different births. I've had, with my first child, a cesarean section, and I've had 2 vaginal births since then. And I am 30 years old, and I'm also a certified breastfeeding specialist, and I'm also a holistic health coach. So I think pretty much that's that's it about me that I can remember right now.
All right, and so your vaginal births that you had afterwards, were they natural births?
Yes.
And were they hospital births or home births or?
They were both hospital births. With my first vaginal birth, he was actually born in the lobby of the hospital.
Wow.
And with my second, she was born in the hospital, but barely making it there. So as soon as I went into the hospital, she was born.
Wow.
So
Oh my
they
God.
technically were hospital births, but they were almost home births.
Wow. They came quick, huh?
Yes.
Well, I know you said, well, you didn't share that about yourself, that you're an advocate for the VBAC, right?
Yes.
Explain, yeah, share a little bit about, becoming an advocate. Yeah.
Okay, so when I had my VBAC, it was in 2013, and at the time, no one in my family had ever had a C-section before, so I was the first one to have a C-section, and that was with my son in 2011. So I knew when I was pregnant with my second son, I just wanted to know, like, is it possible to have a vaginal birth? Because I've always heard you get one C-section, always a C-section. And I knew so many women who had C-sections at the same time, the same year that I had mine. And then they had multiple children afterwards, and they were continuing with having more C-sections. And I was trying to make sure if we had to go this route. And so I started looking up, is it okay for me to have a vaginal birth? And when I found out, like, yes, you can have a vaginal birth after you have a C-section, I just started sharing that with everyone I knew, anyone who had already had a previous C-section or anyone who even had vaginal births. I just was sharing with them, like, it's not always one C-section, always a C-section. Like, you can speak with your doctor and see how things are going, but you don't have to continue to go that route, especially if you want to have multiple children. Like, I know personally a few sisters who want to continue having children, but they've already had about 3 to 4 C-sections. And, at that point, the doctor's like, no, because it puts a
Wow.
strain on your uterus when it has to be cut open so many times. And so that's hurtful as a woman to be told,
Yeah.
like, no, you can't have any more children, or, you'll increase your chances of possibly even dying because of a uterine rupture and things like
Wow.
that. And so I just wanted to share my story so that people can see, like, you can do this another way. You don't have to just accept one way.
Yeah, when I got pregnant with my first child, I was a teenager. My mother, she had 3 C-sections, all her births. There's 3 of us, and she had 3 C-sections. And she kind of like was telling me, and like you said, like, she probably doesn't know, that she could have probably had a vaginal birth, but she told me, like, well, I didn't dilate, and I had 3 C-sections, so you'll probably have to do the same thing. So even so, like, she believed that, and then to kind of, if I didn't know better, to pass that on to me, that you probably will have to too. And I know, like, when I was like an advocate for my friend when she was in labor, like, just being, her, support. She was in labor and delivery, she was by herself. I remember I learned information about how, like, doctors sometimes would kind of may like rush things and just be like, well, you have to get a C-section. And I remember being in the hospital with her, and she was like, the doctor, I just noticed the doctor kept looking at the clock. I just kept looking at the clock, kept looking up, and I'm just like, why is she not focused? It seems like she's has somewhere to go. And my friend was pushing, and then she's like, how about we do it? We need to do a C-section. And then my friend looked at me, and I was like, tell her no. Like, and she's like, no. She's like, no, I don't want to. She's like, well, she kept trying to pressure her. She's like, well, what if the baby's in distress? What if this? What if that? So she was like, but she's not. So no, so it was, even for her, she was like looking around. So it's very important, like you're saying, like, kind of to educate, the women out there that, there is a possibility that you're able to have a vaginal birth and, continue, having more children. So I'm happy that you're sharing that today, because that is something, like, I'm not knowledgeable about, and neither is, like I said, my mother. There's so many women out there who just believe whatever they're being told. So yeah, I can't wait to hear your story. So tell me about that experience.
Well, it kind of sounds a lot similar to what you said just now. So with my first birth, I was young. I think I might have been 20 years old, and I just trusted everyone around me and my family, the medical professionals, and I even had some friends from school who had children the same year as me. And I remember one friend of mine, she was on Facebook the whole time she was in labor. And I remember thinking, like, how is she having her baby right now? She's giving everybody updates, and it's because she had gotten pain medication. And so she got the epidural. And so I thought, okay, like, she's able to still be talking and doing all these things. Her family's around her. And so when I went in with my first child, I was already 6 centimeters dilated, and which is pretty far, for your first child to be going in the hospital that far. I thought, like, okay, baby should be here in no time, but I was super exhausted. And I had been running errands trying to get everything prepared for the baby the night before, and I was super exhausted. And so everyone kept telling me, if you get the epidural, you'll be able to get some rest. And so I said, okay. And then the nurse just told me, you get the epidural, you can get some rest. And then by the time you wake up, pretty much it'll be time to push. And that sounded really good. So I was able to do that. But at the time, no one told me that I wouldn't be able to feel myself pushing. And for me, that was a big thing. And, my mother's there. She's like, you don't need to feel it. Just do what we're telling you to do. And I'm like, I can't feel my legs. And so I can't feel myself pushing. It kind of feels like when you go to get like dental work done, and it's like you feel crazy if you're trying to eat and your mouth is numb. It feels like food is just going to fall all over you.
Yeah.
It was like that same feeling. And the baby's heart rate started to drop. And at that point, when they told us baby's heart rate is dropping, we have to get the baby out immediately, they tried to use, I forgot what the tool is called, but it has like a little needle on it, and it's like kind of like a plunger with like a little needle, and they try to like suction the baby out. They tried everything and he wouldn't come. And so they said, like with your friend, baby is in distress now, so we have to do a C-section. And by that time, I was really exhausted. My family didn't want that for me, but they pretty much couldn't say anything either. And so I had the C-section. And because the C-section, it was harder for me. Like some women are able to still be awake and just have the whole procedure done. But for me, I had oxygen in my nostrils, and it was too strong. And so I asked them, could you please turn down the oxygen? It's too strong. I can't breathe. And I was starting to panic because I didn't know, like, for some reason they had my arms strapped down, like a letter T. Like I just was like, strapped down. And I couldn't breathe. I'm strapped down. And it felt like I just was suffering, like I was suffocating. And so they one of the nurses, she told the doctor, she said, this girl, she is I'm trying to think of the exact word, but pretty much she said that I was becoming anxious. And so the last thing I remember is she gave me a needle and I was out. And I did not see the birth of my son. The next thing I saw was when my husband woke me up and he said, here's our baby. And I remember seeing him, and then I just fell back to sleep again. So it was really traumatic. And I just couldn't understand why they couldn't just turn my oxygen down. It was almost like they didn't feel like doing it. And it was so many things that after these years passed by, I started hearing more and more women talk about their C-section stories and how so many protocols were being broken during the time. I guess between 2010 and 2015, there was a lot of protocols being broken with doctors. And I even found out that I only was allowed to push for about 20 to 30 minutes, but they were supposed to at least give me an hour, and they didn't do that. And so there was so many things. And so I knew with my second son that I was not going to go through that again. And that's why I tried to have the VBAC, and that was in 2013 when I had him. So that was the C-section story. And with the VBAC, my son was born at 36 weeks. And before he was born, I pretty much talked to my doctor, and she said everything was fine, because for me, I fit the description to have a VBAC, because my C-section, it wasn't because of my weight, or it wasn't because of any type of health issues. It was an emergency C-section. And so that is what allowed me for them to give me the okay for my VBAC. And I pretty much changed everything to have this vaginal birth. I just prayed constantly. And so many people, they didn't understand. They were like, why is it such a big deal? As long as the baby's born healthy, that's all that matters. But I saw mentally, after I had my first son, I saw that I was not mentally okay. And I was in a lot of pain. I had, staples and stitches in my body, which was extremely painful. And then I had to deal with breastfeeding, which was painful too at that time. And I saw like I was not okay. And so I knew there was a better way. And I'm like, the Most High designed us as women to give birth a way, a way that it's supposed to happen, and everything will be fine that way. And I knew I wanted to do that. And I was just so thankful when I was able to. that he allowed me to experience that. And so I changed my diet, and I just was praying, and I meditated, and my meditation was more so just clearing my mind of any negative thoughts, any thoughts of doubt. I just wanted to really remember that I could do this, and it was going to be okay. And I did think at the end of it, like if I did have to have another C-section, I would be fine. But I knew that I only kept that in my mind to just not stress myself out. But I knew what goal I was fighting for. And I knew, like, okay, I'm going to have this VBAC, but that was always in the back of my mind. And so he came 1 month early, and on the day he was born, me and my 2-year-old at the time, we were just, he was born in November, so we were just having some tea, and we were just relaxing. It was like a rainy day, and I noticed around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my stomach had like these little crampy feelings, but I thought, no, that's not baby, it's too soon, it's 1 month away. And then 4 o'clock came, and 5 o'clock came, and around 6 o'clock, I called the labor and delivery, and I asked them, I said, I've been having these pains since 3 o'clock. And they just told me, just drink some water. It's probably Braxton Hicks. My body's just preparing for labor, but it's not the real thing.
Yeah, we always know our bodies. I feel like that's the theme after hearing so many birth stories from our people. It's like we know our bodies. We tell them something, and they're like, nah.
Yeah.
Like it kind of bothers me that you're in that, like when you said about when you were getting the C-section, like can you turn the oxygen down? Like I can't really breathe. It's like, nah, we're gonna do what we want to do. But yeah, so you they said just drink some water, and
and I did that, and it was around 6 o'clock, so I started making dinner, and my mother-in-law, she came to visit, and I'm not somebody who likes to share my pain. And so the whole time I'm sitting there talking with her, I'm in so much pain, maybe about a 6 or a 7 on the pain scale. Like it's pretty bad. And I'm just like smiling with her and talking because I didn't want her to worry. And then so she left around 7, and my husband's home. And I told him around 8 o'clock, I put my 2-year-old to bed, and I said, I think that I might be in labor. And by now I'm like vocally in labor. Like I'm like, okay, I need to get my CD on, and I need to like my incense and stuff like that.
So you said that was around 3 o'clock you started feeling something, 3 p.m., right? After the tea. And then when was this that you're saying that it started?
So this is now about 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Because it was becoming so painful that I thought I need to put my 2-year-old to bed, because something's happening here, and I need to be able to focus now, because the pain was so bad that I'm like, okay, he needs to go to bed.
Yeah.
And so I put him to bed, and it's actually funny because a few days earlier, my 2-year-old helped me pack my baby's diaper bag.
Aww.
Because I knew that we were going to have a hospital birth. And so we finished the diaper bag packing, and it was already ready. Like everything was already ready to go, even though it was only a month earlier. I just thought, like, wow, we probably mentally knew that it was time to prepare. And 8 o'clock, I'm just in there, and I started the contraction timers, and they were coming consistently. And so I knew that this wasn't just some practice labor, because now they're coming at a consistent time. And so 9 o'clock, me and my husband, we didn't have a car at this time, so we had to call my mother to come get us. And so she came to take us to the hospital, and my mother-in-law came back to take my baby back to her house. And so we just, by now, I'm just like screaming when my husband is on the phone with his mother. She's like, "Is that Kiara in the background?"
Who is that?
It was just so painful at the time. And I just, I knew it was labor, but I wasn't worried. I knew that it was a month before he was supposed to be born. He was supposed to come December 8th, and I had him on November 7th. And so I just wasn't worried because I said, you know, if my body's doing this, then we'll be fine. Like it's, even though it's a month before the time, I just felt like things will be okay. And we got to my mother's car, and I'm just in a robe and like a maxi dress. Like I just threw something on. It's freezing cold outside, but I'm not even dealing with the weather right now.
Yeah.
And I just get into our car. The hospital's maybe 10 minutes away from us. And on our way, I had my eyes closed the whole time, so I can't see anything. And
Yeah.
then my water breaks in the back seat of
Wow.
her car. My water
Wow.
breaks. And she driving to the hospital, she makes a wrong turn, and so that holds us
Well,
up even more.
well, you told her, did you tell her your water broke? Did you know? Like,
Yeah, like, and this was
okay.
the first time I experienced this, because when I had
Yeah.
the C-section, they had to break my water for me.
Yeah.
And so when this happened, I was like, oh my goodness, my water just broke. Like I burst out and was like, my water just broke. And so she's like, oh my goodness, we really have to go now. And
Missing turns now, right? You said she missed the
yeah,
turn.
that made her kind of panic, and she missed the turn. She drove past the hospital
Oh my
and had to
word.
like make a U-turn. And when we got to the hospital, she had to go inside to try to get me a wheelchair. And she's telling everybody, my daughter's having a baby. She might have it in the car. And there was something special happened when she left out of the car. My husband and I, we were sitting in the back seat, and I guess there was like a break in between my contractions. And so I sat there and I told him, I said, I could have the baby right here in the car. And he's like, Kiara, don't do that.
Like, nah, like we get it. You're strong, but like, I mean, you can have this baby in this car, but I ain't ready to have this baby in this car. So let's
Exactly.
not take our faith there, right? That scares them, right?
Right. And he's like, it's freezing cold outside. He's like, you know, we're right here at the hospital. All we have to do is walk in. And it was almost like a superhuman strength came over me. And I just was like, we can do this. And his name is Rashard. And so I'm like, Rashard, we can do this. Come on, let's go. And so I just got out of the car, and it felt so crazy because I'm just like, I don't know where that strength came from. And I wasn't in any pain at this time. Like the contractions were taking like a long break. And I got inside, and for some reason, this is actually kind of funny. The security, he sees me like having contractions and stuff once I get inside, but he tells my mother he cannot get me a wheelchair because he can't leave his post. And so I guess he might have been on some type of probation with his job or something. But he's
Yeah.
like, Miss, I can't leave my post. And she's like, my daughter's having a baby. And he's like, I'm
Like,
sorry, I can't leave.
that's just too bad. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And so she's running around trying to find a wheelchair for me. There are none available.
that's
And
crazy. Where are
then
all these? Where is the staff? Like,
it's no one. It's just the security guard who can't leave his post, and everyone else is in the back somewhere, like in the different departments.
yeah, working.
And so I have one last contraction, and that's when I knew, as I'm walking to the wheelchair, I have one, and I had to stop, and I just grabbed my husband and I just yell. And I knew in my mind, I'm thinking, this is the ring of fire. And my son, it's like the loudest, most painful contraction, but I knew this is his head. And I told my husband, I said, this is the ring of fire. I said, this is his head coming. And I'm yelling and stuff. And so I just pushed, and I knew, and I said, his head is out. And you know, I have on this robe and I have on my maxi dress, and I'm still wearing my underwear. And so I'm panicking, thinking, what's gonna happen? Like I'm blocking him, like my my undergarments are
Yeah.
blocking him. And so my husband, he kind of helps me, and he's like, okay, he's like feeling around. He's like, okay, I feel his head. And
Wow.
we get the wheelchair, and I just lay back, and my mother and my husband, they're actually there to like catch my baby.
Oh, wow.
And it was just so special. And by then, you know, we didn't know what
Did
we
he
were having at the time.
wait, did he leave his post yet? Did security leave his
At the
post?
okay, the security, he's staring in awe. Like he is just looking, his mouth is literally wide open.
Wow.
And he's just like looking at everything, and he's still at his post. But he's just looking. And you know, my husband, you know, I saw the baby. I see that he's looking right at me. His eyes are wide open,
Oh,
and I'm not panicked at all. But my mother, she's like rubbing his head, and she's like, "Come on, cry, baby, cry," so that we can know like he's alert and awake and everything and alive. And so he starts to cry, and then she tells us, "It's a boy." And I felt like I knew the whole time that it was a boy. And I just was like, wow, like it's a boy. And
wow.
by then, doctors, everyone's coming out, and they're just like, okay, we got to get in a wheelchair. And they get me set up, and they roll me to the back. And I guess there were people in labor and delivery waiting to be seen, and they were like all clapping for me, like it was something from out of a movie.
Oh, that's awesome.
It just felt so amazing, and it was just like completely different from my C-section experience. And I just felt so alert. It was almost like I was on a high. Like I couldn't believe that this was happening, and I just had him. And I just remember thinking like, I did it.
Yeah.
And it just felt so special.
Wow. So I guess, you were like, I could just have this baby right here. You just spoke that
Yeah.
out, that was prophetic, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm having this baby. Probably even the security guard was like, yeah, I was probably like, stay put, just stay put,
Yeah,
because we
exactly.
gonna test this what she just said. Let's no, but so so when you had this birth, okay, I know you were mentally prepared. So were you in the truth? Like you had faith, you were a believer at the time, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah,
How
we
with the
were.
C-section were you as well?
Yes, we
Oh, okay.
were. And I kind of feel like the Most High used that C-section to really get me on the path that I'm on today. And so I don't really look at the C-section as, of course, it wasn't the best thing that I would have wanted to experience, but I look at that now and I'm thankful and I appreciate it, because if I had not gone through that type of experience, I wouldn't know anything about like the business of births in America and the
Yeah.
whole everything, and even going back to how they tested different things on our ancestors, different medical tools and all these things. I would not have looked into any of that if I would have just
Yeah.
had like a regular epidural vaginal birth. I just would have been like, this is how we have babies. And so I really appreciated that the Most High brought me through that experience. And now I know like, this is good.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing and that's inspiring. Like that is very inspiring. And what would you like I learned a lot. I learned a lot of lessons, from your story, but what lessons or one lesson that you would give to other mothers out there who maybe like you said had a cesarean and thinking, maybe I want to do a vaginal birth.
Mhm.
I seen your blog, which is awesome. I know that we're definitely gonna like lead them over to,
Yeah.
that way so they can be prepared. But from your story, what would you share right now?
I would just share with them that it is possible. They can have a vaginal birth. I will always make sure that everyone speaks with their doctor first, or whoever their caretaker is at the time, because I know different women have different bodies, different things happening with
Yeah.
their bodies. So I would always want them to check with their doctor. Um, but if for me, when things don't add up, like if I go online and I see that I fit the description for something but my doctor's still telling me otherwise, then I have to know when I have to use discernment and to judge something for myself. So I would still tell them, don't give up. And just never know what can happen, still believe that they can have the vaginal birth. And just, I guess from my story as well, compared to my first story, is there is something called a snowball effect. And if they, and so it's basically like when you go into the hospital, if you get one intervention, then it may follow with another intervention and things like that. So just try to be mindful of the things that you allow the medical staff to do to you, and have a birth plan. Of course, have a birth plan, and just have certain things that you know, I'm not going to do this at all. Um, but that would be pretty much it. Educate yourself, and make sure you find a staff that is on board with it, because it's legal. Like, I had to look up if it was legal, and it's
Yeah.
it's legal in all of the states in the United States, so
Wow.
it can definitely happen.
Wow. That's good. And how about for any like maybe a birth service provider like a doula or a midwife, out there trying to kind of, I'm saying there's plenty of them, right? But like
Yes.
ones who are really trying to, do what's best for the woman and try to do what's, you know, um like a holy birth plan, do things for the
Mhm.
most high. Those new midwives and new doulas who are like entering into the scene to try and bring out more healthy, natural, safe, and
Mhm.
holy births. What advice would you give them?
I would give them, I would tell them to continue to support the mother in the process of birth and pregnancy and everything, and just continue to have faith, believe that things are going to be okay. But always be watchful. Like, I know as a birth professional, they're always watching to try to see how things are shifting and everything. Always be watchful, and just relax. Like, don't stress. Don't try to put any type of fear on the mother or anything, but just keep calm, and just make sure you're watching as the birth professional. Just make sure you're keeping an eye on things to make sure everything goes well, pretty much.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like, I can't wait to, put this out, and tell us about what you have going on.
Okay, so well, as I said before, I'm pregnant with my fourth child right now, and I don't know what this baby is going to be either.
Oh, wow.
I'm kind of thinking it may be another boy, because I already have two boys and one girl. So either way, I'm just like a surprise. It will be appreciated, and so that's what I'm working on. This time, I'm actually trying to do a home birth, and that's something that I've never experienced, because with my hospital births, there was so much trauma involved, and especially during this time with everything that's happening in the world, I'm just kind of trying to like stay out of that type of atmosphere. I don't want to have to go into a medical facility right now.
I feel you.
So I just want to fully have faith, and have, like what you said, a holy birth. Like, I want to know that the Most High has me everywhere. Like, he has me, if I have my baby at home, if I have my baby in a car or wherever, he will be with me. And so that's the route I'm taking this time. I just want to have a
Nice.
home birth.
Nice. And how about what do you got going on with your website?
Okay, so with my website, I'm back and forth with social media, but this time I really feel that I owe it to the Father to share everything that he's put on my heart to share. And I really feel like this year will be special for me to do that, because I just don't want to continue, like the scriptures say, if you have a candle, you don't put it under a bushel or anything like that. So it's like, I just want to share this with people, all the things that I've gone through, and just have people know,
Yeah.
like you don't necessarily, I'm not trying to have people agree or fight with me or anything. It's just like the information has to be put out there. And so I'm going to continue blogging and sharing what I know,
Nice.
and just, staying in my path, like on this path he has me on.
Yeah, that blog post. I mean, I read a couple blog posts, but the most recent one though, those are some great tips for those mamas out there who are,
Hallelujah. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
yeah. Even the one before that I read, the one I don't know, I think the one before that was the one that was about, making your house a home. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that one was really beautiful. I was like, it matters. Like all that stuff matters. And, there's so much,
Absolutely.
and that's like you said, being able to, take what you learn and not just keep it for yourself, but to give it to, especially the mamas out there who are just like super busy. Like we are
Yeah.
all relatable. We need one another. We need this encouragement. We need the support. And when you share your story, not just keep it to yourself, like those
Yeah.
things are a blessing. Like when I read those things, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. I needed this tip here because like I have five, I'm running around getting things done, and like it's very important to make sure you feel at home, like that's your sanctuary,
Yeah,
and all those tips that
absolutely.
you put out there. So I encourage everybody to go over there. I'll have all of the links in the description, in the show notes. Can you tell us where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram. My name is Shalom. It's at Shalom Kiara. And you can also find my blog on WordPress, and that is shalomkiara.wordpress.com. And I also have a YouTube channel too that I'm working
Yes.
on, and it's Shalom Kiara on YouTube as well. So same name, just in those three places.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I can't wait to, for so many people to hear this, especially like I said, I imagine if my mother heard,
Yeah,
heard your story, like how different birth would have been for her.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on here, and I thank you for sharing your birth stories as well. And I'm going to continue to stay in touch with you so that you can
Yeah.
inspire me more on the path I'm on right now.
Well, I look forward to it, and I just want to thank you once again. And we have to do another one. We definitely do. I want
Yeah,
to hear about this other. When is your baby due?
in August.
August. Okay, so
Mhm.
I definitely got to hear what the Most High does in your family's life with this one, because like with me, it really grows your faith. It's amazing
Yes,
experience.
absolutely.
So thank you so much. Shalom.
Shalom. Bye-bye.
If you love Kiara Taylor's story, then go ahead and head over to Hebrew Home Birth and keep this conversation going. Hebrew Home Birth makes it easy for Hebrew mothers and Hebrew birth service providers such as doulas or midwives to connect so they can create holy birth plans. There's also a community section where you can post, share your birth story, share your information, your inspiration, and to comment, like, share, and favorite each other's posts. There's also a directory, so if you know a Hebrew doula, a Hebrew midwife, or you're a Hebrew doula or midwife yourself, you can go ahead and add yourself to the directory, as well as our podcasts. And if you have a story, then please be our guest. Shalom.